Well, things are getting dark here. I'm running out of light. Let me do the final chapter of Bring Up the Bodies, so we can eagerly await Cromwell, Cromwell coming to the final end in The Mirror and the Light, which hopefully I will receive a copy of sometime in March. The beam down from above from the ebook from Kindle. So yeah, the final chapter, Master of Phantoms, where we learn what Bring Up the Bodies means, and Bring Up the Bodies means declaring someone legally dead, so they can then be executed. It's a legal term, legal process. Cromwell sometimes in this book claims that he's doing all of this. It's just the law. It's just he is executing the king's will. He is using the legal system, and he couldn't save the men that that he prosecutes and the woman, even if he wanted to. It's beyond his powers. All he can do is follow the orders, the king's will. Henry VIII. He does save Wyatt, Thomas Wyatt, the poet, in these pages, and we'll get to him in a little bit. The poet versus the lawyer, Thomas Cromwell. So we do see a lot of dehumanization. I was thinking about that from the last section of how much Anne had receded in this story as we go along, and I think she recedes because she ceases to be an ally, ceases to be a viable woman in Henry's eyes, and in some ways in Cromwell's eyes, and becomes more and more the Viper. I think at some point, I think Mary Sexton, when she gets interviewed by Thomas Cromwell, it's like she opens her mouth and the devil's tail comes out. It's like we're turning her into this creature. And indeed, there's like a lot of way through the book. It's like it's all the stories, everything that they can dig up, everything that they can conjure, the incest, the treason, the conspiracies. It's like this is all the stuff that the chapter is called Master of Phantoms, and they talk about like Anne's phantom lovers, and indeed Cromwell masters the men that are accused of this, the four men that are accused of this, and he's also the master of the phantoms of as in the incest, the treason, the conspiracy. He masters all of this stuff. He's amazing at marshaling all of this stuff. He says he's not somebody who's doing this for revenge, but every time he ticks off a person, it's like, okay, right forepaw, left forepaw, right hind leg, back hind leg. These are there was this entertainment that was played after Wolsey's death, where they turned him into this creature, and the four men dressed up in robes, dragged him to hell. They turned him into a beast, Cromwell thinks to himself. And that's how he thinks about that's what he thinks about as he ticks off each one of these men. And Mark Smearton, who made a ballad about it. The sections of Mark Smearton are, I think, maybe the worst of the lot, because the psychological torture that Cromwell does is chilling. This truly is a functionary of the state who they torture him with Christmas. They lock him. I mean, Cromwell isn't. Maybe it's not his idea. It seems to be Christoph's idea. His one of his guys, to lock him in the closet with the Christmas ornament, which Christoph had mistaken for an instrument of torture, and so they torture him with Christmas, which is like. In this whole thing, somewhat centering around, at least in Cromwell's mind, is around kind of Christianity. They torture him with Christianity, with Christmas, with the the birth of with a symbol of the of like the birth of Christ, which is just that additional thing. Now, of course, Mantel is really good at while Cromwell is dehumanizing to a certain degree these people, Mantel is very good at reminding us that he is actually a human being, that he doesn't go for the jugular on one guy. He actually stands like he can tell. I think it's a Weston. He can tell that he's about to snap. He's about to give him like everything he wants, like all the juicy bits. At which point Cromwell stands up suddenly and leaves the room before he can confess, because he's got him. He's broken him, and it's before he can confess. He gets up and he leaves. And there's another occasion where Anne goes to him and touches his arm, and there's for a brief moment there that Cromwell falters. He then quickly realizes that actually no, Anne is still, as much as Cromwell, is a calculating, strategic creature, and that this is just her trying to get him in a way. But it's like it disturbs him that there's these weaknesses. There's these weaknesses in here. It's interesting how this seems to kind of we've gone a bit of a full circle here, because we had an earlier flashback. I think it's in this book. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's in this book, where as a boy he witnesses a woman getting burned for her evangelical reformist ideas, like the sacrament is just a piece of bread, all that stuff. And the constable, Kingston, the constable at the tower, says like, "Oh, I hope they don't burn her. Have you ever seen a woman get burned?" And it's like, yes, Cromwell has seen a woman get burned, and it's seems to be one of those events that he's got fixed in his mind, that he never forgotten, but it seems to have pushed him down a path of, we need to reform our religion. But where is it taken him? It's taken him that he is now going to execute a woman, and no, she's not going to get burned. She's going to get her head chopped off. But there's that thing again of we're going to do violence to someone who does not deserve her fate. This is all trumped up charges. And it's interesting that I think it's the French ambassador who's got a lot of wrong ideas, I'd say, about, like, doesn't understand the English system. But the one thing it does say is that, Catherine, the old queen, was sort of a protector for Anne, because the second she died, Henry started plotting. He's like, I want to be a respectable man, and Anne represents not being respectable, and so I have to get rid of her. I have to expunge her. I mean, if Anne had also produced a male heir, we always go back to that. It probably could have gotten papered over, but it's that thing of he wants to be a respectable man. Just on a side note, but also just on the whole, kind of captures Henry's view of these women, and that how interchangeable they are. He gives this gift to Jane Seymour. He gives her a book. It's like Latin verses of Bible verses to Jane Seymour, and he's wrapped, I guess, and he hands it to Cromwell. Cromwell takes it to Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour opens it, and it's got Henry's initials, and it's got Anne's initials in it, and Cromwell is like super embarrassed, and Jane's like, "Oh crap!" And also underneath of Anne's initials, there's the old queen Catherine's initials. It's like, yes, she doesn't quite yet understand how thrifty of a king he is, and how thrifty he is also about women. It's like, I can just reuse them. I can, what was good for one was good for the other. They also have that with the heraldry again of what can we chip off to change the heraldry from one to another. But that's just like, you can see Jane kind of blanching at that moment, going, "Oh crap, I'm number 3," and well, if you know history, you know what happens. But she could very easily. So it's just that it was just like that. There's that moment where you just have to go, I am just another chip. I'm just another chip, which is I mean, it's the thing with the women here is their bodies are vital for the state to produce a male heir, to weld lines, to get alliances and stuff like that. But they are chips. They are interchangeable chips in this thing. They are, again, bodies. Bring up the bodies. Bring up the next queen as well. Yeah. So yeah, Cromwell himself. Um, I think having read having read half of a history book on Cromwell, I was slightly concerned with Wolf Hall. It's like, oh, are we being too light on Cromwell? Are we being too forgiving of is Mantel being too forgiving of Cromwell? And I kind of accused her of maybe perhaps being a little too much in love with him. I have to, because and at that point I'd only read Wolf Hall and I hadn't gone on to Bring Up the Bodies when it initially came out, or a long time ago. But now that I've gone through, it's like we've gone to a Cromwell who's kind of turned back. You can see someone who was like brutally beaten by his father as a child, basically used as an object, who brutalized his family, and him coming up and being somebody like, I'm going to take care of those around me, those that are my family, I am going to love. But you do have that thing of tribalism of, if you're in his group, he will be fiercely loyal to you. But you hurt somebody he loves, like Wolsey, or you're outside of that thing, he will be the cold functionary who will kill you. You will be the other that can get executed. And I mean, so much of the brutalities of large-scale history, and just, of our individual lives, of we see a stranger on the street versus we see a friend or a family member on the street. We sadly, the instincts that instincts are that habit is to you treat them very differently, and it's like one is a human being that you care about, the other one is simply an object, and you get that with Cromwell, who very much kind of comes across at the end here as a brawler. It's like, they're going to come for me because, like, everyone in this book is like, yeah, you're going to get rid of us, you're going to get rid of Anne, and they're going to come for you next. It's like Anne was the one who is bringing the gospel, the religion that you wanted. Once she's gone, they'll bring the Roman Catholics back in, and they will just, your head will be on the spike next, Cromwell. And Cromwell, there's like a brawler thing there. There's that getting into fights, stabbing someone as a kid, being his Walter's son. There's that sense that comes out. It's like, yeah, they can come, I'll be waiting for them, and I will give as good as I can get. There is that kind of sense. Yeah. So it's like Mantel is always so good at giving us the human Cromwell, but also giving us the state functionary Cromwell. And I mean, even in the book, Cromwell says there is no division between the personal and the public and the personal, the private man and the public man. Noting even, like, Thomas More was more than happy to bring home heretics and torture them in his own home. And Cromwell brings Mark Smeaton back to his place, and yes, he's not put on a rack. Cromwell does a lot of self-justification for that. Like, he wasn't put on a rack. We didn't harm him, but they terrified this guy. They reduce him to a blubbering mass, of where the final effect is him to the really foolish guy to give himself up, and to die for it, to be one of the men beheaded. Smeaton kind of gets you that way. So yeah, I'm going on again. So yeah, it's a good complicated book. Cromwell, you can see, you get it from Cromwell's point of view, but Mantel leaves plenty of space for you to see that Cromwell's is doing the necessary thing, I guess, for you to be a human being is you kind of rationalize things. You say, you know, I didn't kill more. I wasn't avenging myself on these four men for turning Wolsey into a beast. They did it to themselves. They did it to themselves, and I just happened to be the guy around who's following orders to do it. But yet at the same time, you get the sense of there's a part of him. It's like, yes, I did this. I think the thing with Anne maybe affects him the most. We seem to get more and more at the end there of Anne as a human being who's kind of slowly kind of becoming this hollowed out, emaciated woman. She seems to liquefy when she understands what's happening, almost allude them that way, like she's just going to melt away from the hammer blow of the king is not coming for me. I'm never going to see the king again, and I'm going to be killed. And her laughter, you know, this very frail human being, which Cromwell can't help but not see, but at the same time, he talks about how, you know, God gave him a human heart, but it got scooped out, and you had to end up with a stone heart instead to survive. You know, there's something I think they talk about, like, kind of the hero's quest of trying to retain an innocence, a humanity, and that's kind of a hero's quest. And Cromwell's not a hero. He is somebody who definitely loses that. The innocence, and I'm not talking about kind of like dumbness, but just kind of a tenderness of spirit, of the heart, is this, you know, there's that transformation from a boy getting beaten by his father to a man who is beating down others that are outside of his thing. He has a wider circle he's not self-centered man. He has a wide circle of people he cares about, but outside there, it's a hard stone heart there. All right, well, the mirror and the light next, as the lights go down here. More videos later.